Hello, music fans. I'm making this video to talk about my top 13 progressive rock albums from before the year 2000. I'm thinking I'll make another video to talk about progressive rock albums from the year 2000 and onwards, another top 13 there, and then a top 13 progressive metal albums in another video. So this will just be progressive rock, not progressive metal. And yeah, I don't know why 13. I was just feeling lucky. That's just the number that kind of made sense to me when I made lists. Top 10s didn't capture enough of the awesome stuff that I wanted to capture. Top 20 seemed like it would be too long of a video. So 13 it is. Jumping right in, I'm going to go in reverse order, starting with number 13, my 13th. Oh, I also made a limit here of only one album per artist. So some of the artists near the top end of my ranking, like if I allowed more than one artist for per one album per artist, they would kind of dominate the ranking. So I wanted to get a variety of artists on here, so it's not all like Rush and Pink Floyd and yes, spoiler alert. But yeah, let me start in with number 13. It's I wanted to put something interesting on here that wouldn't be on most people's list. So I've got Jordan Rudess solo album, and the one that I picked is called Listen from 1993. It's his second studio album. He plays keyboards and does vocals on here, and then he has other musicians play bass guitar and drums and a female vocalist on here as well. It's a progressive rock album. This is from 1993, before he even joined Dream Theater, so it's cool to see what Jordan was doing before Dream Theater, and that he was still making cool progressive music and playing keyboards extremely well. My number 12 album on here of prog rock albums from pre-2000 is going to be another one from the 90s. This is from 1998. It's called Sliver of a Sun is the name of the album, and the band is called Is, and this is their first album. This is a band from New York, and they kind of sound like, they started in the 90s, but they sound a lot like the classic 70s band. So if you're a fan of ELP, Genesis, Yes, King Crimson stuff, you'll probably like this band, so check them out. And then my number 11, I'm going to go with a guitar virtuoso person here, Steve Vai, with his album Flexible, which is his debut album. And this is kind of weird, progressive, experimental, some shred guitar, but it's not all shred guitar. There's vocals on here. It's not instrumental like some of his albums. It's very kind of tongue-in-cheek and kind of silly. So if you like comedic lyrics, if you're a fan of some Devin Townsend or some of the weirder Zappa music, or like, I don't know, Mr. Bungle, that kind of stuff, weird experimental proggy guitar-based stuff, this would be interesting to you. And my number 10 is Tarkus, the album Tarkus by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, also known as ELP. This is a great album from 1971. So now finally, number 10, I'm diving into one of the classics from the 70s, the golden era of prog. My number 9 prog rock album on this list here is going to be another one from the 70s and from one of the classic prog rock bands. This is going to be an album from Genesis, and I actually went and decided to pick A Trick of the Tail, which is from 1976, and it's their first album after Peter Gabriel left, their first album with Phil Collins on vocals. I love a lot of the Peter Gabriel albums as well, but I think some of the Phil Collins albums are underrated, and everybody talks about how great the Peter Gabriel era is, but I actually really like Phil Collins' vocals, and He's kind of my favorite vocalist in terms of his vocal performances in Genesis. I think he does. He might be a better singer than Peter Gabriel, but I think the reason why people like the Peter Gabriel era better than the Phil Collins era is because the music is more progressive, and then after Phil Collins joins, it becomes a bit more on the pop side. But this album was still progressive. It's Phil Collins had joined or had started doing vocals. He had previously been drumming only and doing backing vocals, but he started doing lead vocals. But they kept it progressive. It hadn't yet gone pop. So I kind of like this one, A Trick of the Tail. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, what am I at? I'm at number 8. Number 8, I'm going to pick an album from Journey. And I'm going to go with an interesting pick here that I don't see too many people talking about. It's an album called Dream After Dream, and it's actually a soundtrack album made in 1980. And it's really cool. I really love the opening song, Destiny. I think it's great because it's progressive, but it has the amazing vocals of Steve Perry, who I think is the best Journey vocalist, the iconic one that everyone remembers where they got all their success. Well, most of their albums with Steve Perry have more of like an arena rock, pop rock kind of vibe and aren't as progressive as their work from before Steve Perry joined. But this one it's very, very cool. Number 7 is going to be from the band Primus, and the album's called Tales from the Punch Bowl. Maybe this is questionable whether it's progressive rock. Wikipedia says it is, and I tend to agree. It's kind of alternative, funk, metal, experimental, and progressive rock all thrown together. Primus is just weird. They don't really sound like anybody else. You kind of just have to hear it to know. It's not a band for people who are into like singing and melody, as Les Claypool delivers his vocals in kind of a humorous, sarcastic way, and they're not really melodic vocals. This is more a band for people who are into crazy, funky bass lines, and Les Claypool's bass playing is just out of this world. He's one of the best bass players of all time, in my opinion. I just really love listening to him play the bass. A great song on here would be Winona's Big Brown Beaver. As you can tell from the title, they're pretty, they joke as well. So for people that kind of like silly stuff, this would be a good album for them. Number 6, progressive rock album from before the year 2000 is going to be by Porcupine Tree, and it's Stupid Dream, which is their 5th album, released in 1999. And yeah, really, really like them. My favorite song on here, I'm not actually sure, maybe Don't Hate Me. It's a pretty good song. They have some other good songs on here, Even Less, Piano Lessons, etc. My friend Alana and I did an album ranking video on Porcupine Tree, so you can check that out on my channel as well if you want to hear more about Porcupine Tree albums. This is my favorite of their pre-2000 output, but I actually really like their last 4 albums that they made after the year 2000 even better than this. My number 5 top prog rock albums from before 2000 is going to be In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson, which some people say is the first progressive rock album. It's released in 1969. As far as I can tell, that might actually be kind of true. I know that between 67 and 69, other artists released progressive rock songs, artists like the Beatles, Procol Harum, Pink Floyd, but a lot of that stuff was more on the psychedelic side or just traditional rock, and they might have a song or two that were progressive rock, but the whole album didn't really fit the progressive rock definition. In the Court of the Crimson King is the first album I've seen chronologically where it feels like from start to finish it's a progressive rock album. So I really like King Crimson. I've seen them live, they're excellent. I really recommend In the Court of the Crimson King to any progressive rock fan. My number 4 prog rock album pre-2000 is Free Hand by Gentle Giant. And this is a wild band that is not for beginners who are getting into prog because they're pretty out there. I really like the song Just the Same that opens the album. Really good album. They do a lot of really good multi-part vocal harmonies and a cappella parts. The musicianship is off the charts. They have a lot of influence from classical music as well as jazz, and every band member plays a lot of instruments. So you hear things like recorder, saxophones, violins, violas, as well as like every kind of percussion instrument, keyboard and guitar and bass you can imagine, and lots of vocals going on, lots of like counterpoint. Really cool album from 1975, Free Hand by Gentle Giant. So into my top 3 here, and these 3 are pretty legendary. Probably most people will have, if anybody was making like a top 10 prog rock albums, they'd probably have something from these 3 bands on them. Number 3 is going to be Fragile by Yes from 1971. I know a lot of people would put Close to the Edge. Close to the Edge is my second favorite, and Close to the Edge might actually be a better choice if you want to like define what is prog. It's like almost a definitive album for prog, but I think Fragile is a bit underrated, and a lot of people talk about Close to the Edge and not as much about Fragile, but I really like it. I really like Roundabout, and really every song on here is great. My number 2, now I actually have props for my top 2. Number 2 I've got on vinyl, Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, and that's my favorite Pink Floyd album. And there's great songs on here. I really like Welcome to the Machine, obviously Shine On You Crazy Diamond, Wish You Were Here, Have a Cigar. Really, it's like every song is just an amazing immersive journey. Great album, maybe close to a perfect album. Yeah, like these last 2 albums that I'm talking about are like 10 out of 10 here. So Wish You Were Here, really great. Everybody knows it, so I don't need to talk too much about it. And my last album is another fairly popular one. Everybody knows this one, the band Rush, and the album that I'm picking is Moving Pictures. Also, maybe not the best choice for what's their most progressive album. People might say albums like 2112 or Hemispheres or even Caress of Steel, which I agree, those albums are more progressive, but Moving Pictures has this amazing thing about it where it manages to be a progressive rock album but is also really accessible and radio friendly and catchy, and like anybody who's not even a progressive rock fan could listen to this and realize it's great. So that's one of the reasons why I like it. My favorite Rush album. Side 1 is amazing. And yeah, that's my top 13 progressive rock albums from before the year 2000. Stay tuned and I'll talk about my 2000 and onwards list as well as a progressive metal list. Peace out.